Hi, let's work on another application on financing of current assets. And this one is about short-term versus long-term borrowing. Remember that the short-term borrowing was the one that's interest rate is changing, Federal Reserve System is changing it, and the long-term is the borrowing with locked-in fixed interest rate for a longer period. So this business requires 850,000 for the next 2 years. That's the time frame. And the firm can borrow the funds for 12% per year. That's the one that's going to be locked in for each year. So they need 850,000 year one, 12% interest. If they lock it in, the second year is going to stay the same. Or if you want, you can go short term, which is going, the interest rate is not locked in. Short term is going to be changing and is going to be 7.7% first year and then 13.55 next year. That's a forecasting amount. It doesn't mean that this is what's going to be. So we have to calculate the dollar amount for each loan, once with 12% staying the same for each year, one when it's changing from 7% to 13%. Before we do the dollar amount, you can quickly see based on the interest rate given here, one is 12%. Let's see how much would this be on average. So if we add 7.75%, let me do this, plus 13.55%, and then we divide by 2, it's going to come up as 10.65% on average between those two interest rates, this one and this one. 10.65% is less than 12%, so it looks like the short-term interest rate it's lower, at least in theory. Now if we do the dollar amount, let's see, we are going to do $850,000 my loan times 12% 0.12 times 2 years, because I need to borrow that 2 years. Then I pay 204,000 interest. Then I do the second plan, first year 775, second year 13. I end up with less. You see, that's less than what I have here as forecasted. Well, but this is again in theory, because in reality we don't really know that these interests are going to be 7 and 13. Only Federal Reserve System decides about the level of interest rates. That's 7. Now 8 and 9 are very similar but different numbers, so I trust that you can work on those. Now let's do an application on optimal policy mix. This one is going to involve this table here that I showed you. So let's see, we have this business needs money in amount 2,500,000, and if it goes with low liquidity plan, so low liquidity plan is going to be 18%. With a high liquidity plan, let's use a different color, is going to be 14%. If the firm goes with short-term financing, it will be 10%. Short-term financing is going to be 10%. And with long-term financing is going to be 12%. That's long-term financing is going to be 12%. So using this table that's in the PowerPoint, which is really that financing plan that I showed you over here, let's try to answer these questions. Compute the anticipated return after financing costs with the most aggressive financing mix here. Which one is the most aggressive? The most aggressive is the one in which you have short-term financing and low liquidity, high return. So we are going to work here low liquidity, which means that I'm going to invest more aggressively to go for more return. Low liquidity, I'm going to go for high return, which is 18% over here. So apply to my money that I have is going to be 450,000. And then short-term financing, it's a negative because I borrow money to be able to invest. So that's going to be short-term financing. is short-term financing is 10% over here. So I borrowed 10% and then I invested 18% and I make 200,000 on my money, 2,500,000. Then also for B, compute the anticipated return with the most conservative plan. The most conservative plan says I'm going to go long-term financing, locking the interest rate instead of having it variable. And I'm going to go for high liquidity, low return. So that's going to be my B. High liquidity, low return. You see my low return is 14%, is lower than 18. And then my long-term financing borrow money at 12% rather than 10, but it's locked in. So I'm going to end up with less money that I make, the most conservative. And then the other ones that ask at C, it says calculate anticipated return for the other two moderate. So I'm going to go low liquidity and long-term financing, and then short-term financing and high liquidity. I combine those two plans. And low liquidity, we have, that means I go more aggressively in investing. I make more return, 18%, but then I lock in long-term financing, conservative on this side. So I make 150,000, the difference between those two. And then I have high liquidity, low return, which is low return I make, and then short term. I have to apologize for this barking. I'll continue the recording.